5 minutes past 10. Our talkback lawyer David Whiting is here to help you with free legal advice, and the number 1300 222 774 is the number 1300 222 774 if you would like to ask David a question to do with the law. Morning to you, David. Good to see you again.
Well, nice to have you back, John.
While I was away, we had the next Chief Justice nominated and named by the Attorney General, Martin Pakula.
Yes.
A former solicitor.
A partner at Allen's.
So this has never happened before. We've got a number of judges.
Well, it might have happened 150 years ago, but not sort of in living memory, no.
We've had judges appointed from the solicitor side of the profession, which is more the office and desk-bound rather than court advocacy side of lawyering. Yes. That's the distinction. Barristers do the sort of jawboning in court.
Up. Yep.
And solicitors do the preparation and all those other sorts of things. So a Chief Justice, will this go down well with those who have come from the barrister side of the profession who dominate the judiciary?
I don't see it as an issue. Had there been an appointment direct from solicitor to Chief Justice, I would have thought there would have been a significant pushback. But she's on the court. She's proved her ability to do what it is that judges are supposed to do.
And Ferguson,
I wouldn't have seen an issue.
For many years now on the Supreme Court.
Yes.
She's been on the Court of Appeal, I think, is she?
I think so, yes. Yep. So, certainly got the skills and expertise to carry it off, and has proved her ability in the court system.
So the gossip I've had, and even though I've been away, I've kept in touch, and there's a bit of rumbling from just a few who are dismissed as the dinosaurs, and the rest have all said no, terrific appointment, excellent, has vast, great credentials and vast experience on the management side, which is what a Chief Justice has to do, and in fact most barristers don't have those skills because they work on their own.
Yes, yeah, most barristers are, in a sense, a one-person business, yeah. But I've heard stories from earlier years ago when solicitors were appointed to the bench. There were some judges who would refuse to interact with them. Mm-hmm. So it's we're in a changing world. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I find fascinating now is that when the attorney makes new judicial appointments, they're often a male and a female at the same time. So I just thought of it's part of the government's policy.
Oh, it's, when Daniel Andrews was elected, he said 50% of the positions we appoint across the board on boards, whether it's the water board or whether it's the, this, that or the other, let alone judges and the like, 50% will be women, full stop. So, I was amongst the mail that was waiting for me. I had this huge mountain of mail, and there was an invitation to an event just last week that I was very, very sad to miss. I was sad to miss the memorial service for Drew Morford. I was very sad to miss a memorial service for Clive, our former Sunday mornings presenter, too. But I also was invited to and couldn't go because I was still travelling to an event that Monash University put on, an endowment from Francine McNiff, which is being used to further the study of criminology.
$3.8 million was the amount of the gift. It was an extraordinary amount.
People don't know who Fran McNiff was, so we need to do a bit of background here. She was a teacher at Monash Uni Law School who went to the bar. She was one of the very first of those pioneering people who took on a high-profile position, women taking on a high-profile position in the law, and sadly died very quietly a little while ago.
Well, her death notice was, "I have ceased to exist."
And by the time you read this sort of thing,
Yes,
I am no longer here.
It's one step down from an unattended cremation. Yes,
and she was a feisty and take no prisoners type of barrister, and with profound respect from people right across the profession. And she left her estate to the law school.
Yeah, she made some other gifts as well, but a substantial payment to the law school.
Fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
I'd rather she was still here.
Yes, but she's not, and what she's done, what she's left, she's done great things with.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, what else has happened?
Well, John, I had one homework from last week from a gentleman in Truganina who was turned left out of a street into a major road, pulled up by the police and said, "Well, I needed to check my speed, so therefore you interfered with the traffic flow. Therefore, you need to pay me some. You're getting an infringement notice." And then shortly thereafter, that police officer's partner comes up and sees that there is a child in the back seat who is unrestrained, and he gets charged with that.
Right.
Now, the question is...
But was the child unrestrained when the vehicle was moving or only after it stopped?
Well, that was why I had to go and look, because what the law says is that you're required to have the child restrained if the vehicle is moving and if the vehicle is stationary but not parked. So the gentleman who rang said that he'd pulled over, he'd turned off the engine, and I come along and say, well, at that stage you are parked. The issue of restrained and unrestrained doesn't apply. Mm-hmm. But you can imagine that if you still had your foot on the brake in the car and the engine running, then there's an argument that you are stationary and not parked. So
that's the same argument about using a handheld phone whilst you're in the driver's seat, whether the engine's on, the keys are in the ignition, all of those sort of things.
Whether you're parked or stationary. It's the when you pull over to use the phone, if you've got the clutch in and the foot on the brake, then you are stationary but not parked.
Yep.
And there was a report in the paper during the week about a number of developers who are bringing contracts to an end to take advantage of a rising market. So, there are lots of building contracts that have lots of off-the-plan contracts that might take 2 or 3 or 4 years to run.
So I turn up on Saturday and look at a model of an apartment or a demonstration apartment and say, I'll sign up for one of those. I sign a contract and pay a deposit, and then what happens after that?
They go and build.
But it might take a couple of years.
Well, I've seen contracts that take 5 years.
Right.
It's a 60-month building contract. Now, what happens is that if at the end of 60 months, if the building is not finished or the plan of subdivision not registered, then the purchaser has the right to withdraw. Well, some contracts give the vendor and the purchaser the right to withdraw. So
what are the vendors doing?
Well, they're not everybody. Most of them are honouring their contracts. But what they're doing is they're saying, well, if I was to sell the property now, I might get another 10 or 15% in the price.
Because the market's gone up
so
much.
The market's gone up. So
let me see if I can shaft the people who paid me a deposit a few years ago.
Yes. Well, I haven't had the deposit's been sitting in a bank account. Nobody's touched it.
No, but I'll give it back to them.
Yes.
And put it back on the market for 10 or 15% more.
Yes. And what makes it interesting, John, is that the banks will only lend developers money in those circumstances where they have a certain proportion pre-sold. Mm-hmm. So they actually pick up the advantages of the pre-sold contracts. And
what can you do about that?
It's a general proposition, absolutely nothing. If the contract says either can withdraw, so that's a legislation there might be something that comes in. But I can see circumstances where a builder might want to change the plan. Anyway, it's just something to watch out for. Who has the right to withdraw? So when you sign those real estate contracts, you really need to get advice before you sign them. You need to understand the risks. I mean, if you're buying off the plan and there's 100 lots in the plan, it's extraordinarily unlikely that the developer will accommodate any wish you may make, so even if other than to the colour of the bench top. So even if you go and get legal advice on the contract before you pay the deposit and sign it, it's unlikely that the developer will change. Even if the advice twigs to that risk, that they'll actually amend the standard contract. It's like a car hire contract. If you say you don't like one little bit of it, they'll say, well, go to another car hire. Or don't hire the car. Yeah, so they'll just say, don't buy the building. Yes. Okay. Anything else? That's it. Nathan in Northcote is first up this morning. And Nathan, good morning to you. You're through to David.
Good morning, guys. How you going?
Very well, thank you, Nathan.
Good, thanks. There's two aspects to my question. So I was in a band and basically got fired. And I'm chasing up some gig payments. So we did a bunch of gigs in July. So I'm chasing up payment for that. And basically the guys told me to stop contacting him. So that's the first aspect. The second aspect is we have a bunch of merchandise and CDs, so probably about 600 CDs that have my face on them and some of my creative work on them. Just your face or your face amongst others? My face and the other guys, so it's a two-piece band. Yep.
And when you say your creative work, what's your creative work?
So it had songs that I wrote on it and, other songs that I arranged, and obviously all my playing was on the album. Right, okay. And so my understanding is he's going to keep selling those as he still has the band. Yes. Am I entitled to royalties or ongoing payments for those?
Did you sign any agreement when you were in the band?
No.
Was anything in writing at any stage produced?
No.
Okay.
Okay, Nathan, there's a different series of aspects to that. You're still owed the money, because presumably somebody owned the band and you worked for them for a fee on a sessional basis. You are still entitled to be paid that money. You can in fact sue for the money. You could take the band operator manager to VCAT. In terms of the copyright that exists in the CDs that have been produced, and that will include the case, I believe that you gave them a licence for the production of those devices, both the CDs that contain the tracks and the image. So, but you wouldn't have given them a licence for them to go and make any more. So you will have copyright in the song because you wrote it, and your argument would be, well, you can't play that song anymore. There's a difficulty in relation to actually working out how you would assess the value for an arrangement of a particular. You don't know the words, you don't know the music, but you're saying, well, I'm now entitled to something for the emphasis which goes into it. I think that's hard. I would be, it's a cease and desist. You can't produce any more CDs with my track on it, and you can't produce any more CDs with my image on it. And by the way, you owe me money.
And how much money, if they were to give you what you wanted, Nathan in Northcote, how much would it be?
All up, probably about $5,000.
Wow.
Oh.
That's a lot of money for a small band.
Yeah, I mean, we're very busy. Like, we did some 80 gigs this year.
Okay. So,
VCAT.
Yeah, so in terms of getting that money back, what's
Well,
the
I don't.
for me?
It's you would issue a civil claim in VCAT, seeking
is that
payment.
Like small claims.
It's a small claims jurisdiction. Everybody pays their own. Presumably, there's some exchange of emails to say what your sessional fee was.
Yeah, I've got
Then that's it, and off to VCAT.
Good luck, Nathan.
Cool. Awesome. All right, thanks, guys.
And speaking of legal issues, it's just flashing across the screen that the Supreme Court case by the West Australian Rugby Union against the decision to axe the Perth team from the Super Rugby comp has failed. So West Australian Rugby were complaining to the courts that the decision to axe the Perth team from the national competition was invalid, and they have failed in that litigation. That's just flashed across the screen. Garnet in Taylors Lakes. Good morning. You're through to David.
Good morning, gentlemen. My daughter was employed recently in a not-for-profit social work environment in New South Wales.
Yes.
She resigned to join another organisation in the same city, and in calculating the tax owable and all that sort of stuff, the organisation miscalculated, and as a result, she has a tax bill.
Is it a significant tax bill, Garnet?
It's significant for her because she's got very low income. She's on a very low income, being a social worker.
Can I ask, Garnet, the normal proposition is that, is it more that the payment summary was wrong or the tax was wrong? It may be that they categorised her tax in a particular way, because bona fide redundancies and some termination payments have a concessional tax treatment.
I understand.
And it may be that when they calculated her pay, they used that, but when they gave her a payment summary, it said something slightly different.
Yes. My understanding is that it was over some period of time that the tax was incorrectly calculated, as well as at the conclusion of her employment.
And do you know why it was incorrectly calculated? It may be...
A simple error is what I understand.
Well, no, I understand a simple error, but a simple error might be we forgot to note that you had a HEX debt, so we took tax at a lower rate. The difficulty is, Garnet, is that your daughter was paid X dollars per year.
Yes.
Out of her X dollars per year, she had an obligation to pay the tax office her income and may have had a HEX or similar debt.
Yes.
That too comes out of her income.
Yes.
The tax liability is actually hers.
I see.
So really it's a question of talking to the tax office about some kind of instalment plan.
But can you ever go to the tax office and say, look, that's not actually what I should have had as deductions and the like? My employer, who I no longer work for and no longer can have a working relationship with, made a mistake. Here's what the real position should be, and have it adjusted. Can you do that?
Well, but John, no. It's like saying you've been overpaid by mistake. I'd like some money back, please.
Well, sometimes that's true.
Yes, but Garnet's daughter is that she has personally in her bank account received more than she was entitled to. But they'd notionally like the money back, please.
Can you go beyond what's on the document from the employer with the tax office? Can you say to the tax office, no, that's wrong?
Oh, yeah, but that's getting the statement amended.
Yeah.
That's not the same as I owe you the tax, I want someone else to pay it for me.
Yeah.
So the chances of getting your tax waived are nil, or so close to nil as to be irrelevant.
Yes.
But you should be able to enter into an instalment arrangement on the basis of that discussion.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Garnet, good luck.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
gentlemen.
Anne in the city. Morning to you, Anne. You're through to David.
Hello,
Good
Anne.
morning. Thank you for taking my call. I just have a simple question. We are married, both previous marriages with children from both partners. I want to make a will when I retired. My husband does not want to make a will. I've asked him many times, and I can't get through to him. Where do I stand if one or both of us were to die?
Well, let's just assume that you're still alive and he dies. You get there. We're in the process of changing the law, but the law at the moment is that you get the first $100,000 of his assets and 1/3 of the balance. So, do you own a house together?
We do, yes.
Do you own it jointly?
Jointly, yes.
Then the law would say that the house belongs to you
Upon the death of the
upon
other,
the death of
the
your
other owner.
husband.
Yep.
And what then happens is that you get the first $100,000 of his estate, which doesn't include the house, and you get 1/3 of the balance. And depending on what he's done with his super, you may have a claim on the super as well.
Okay.
Is there a tension, Anne? What's not being expressed here is there a tension between your partner's desire to distribute to the children of the first marriage?
I would probably think that would be the case. Yes.
And that is something you can't even get to talk to each other about?
That's right, exactly.
The issue, though, Anne, is that the most substantial asset in your marriage is likely to be the house.
Yes.
And if you die first, it goes to you. If he dies first, it goes to you.
Yeah, if Anne dies first, it goes
The
to
issue,
him.
of course, is, yes, if that happens, and then if you were to die first, he gets the house, he leaves his assets in accordance with his... Well, he has no... So his children would inherit everything he leaves.
Yes,
So-
yes.
What you might consider doing, this is a really hard call, you might sever the joint tenancy so that you would change the manner of holding for the house so it becomes half each rather than shared.
So you can distribute your own half
To your
as you
children.
see fit to each of the children you have from previous unions.
So we are in the process of selling this house and buying another one. So
Well,
how
if
would I
you were
have
to
make
buy the
title?
next one, you buy it as tenants in common in equal shares, and then you make a will that deals what you think are appropriate with your assets.
And you can leave your half to whoever you want to leave your half to, and he can leave his half to whoever he wants to leave his half to.
So you might say, my husband can stay in it till he dies, but when he dies, it then goes to my children.
Okay.
All right, that's a way you could look at it, but gee whiz, have the discussion.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I've tried many times.
All right. Thank you, Anne.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good luck. Keith in Hampton, morning to you too, Keith.
Hi, David. Hi, John. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
Look, I'm in an office in a residential complex, and I wanted to put a fixed sign out the front of the property, and the homeowners corporation have knocked me back.
Yes.
It's a small sign, but they're
When you say
saying
small, what does small mean to you, Keith?
that, 60 centimetres by 25 centimetres.
That's very small.
I know. That's all they'd let me have, and I was happy to.
It's a
have
bit
that.
more than an A4 piece of paper.
Oh, effectively, yeah.
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 So they've said no. We had an in-principle agreement, and they've come back to me and said no, on the reason that it was too intrusive on the aesthetics of the front entrance, and it
Must
would
be a beautiful front entrance.
Oh, you should see it.
Do they
Yes.
want a smaller sign or no sign at all?
No sign at all, and it would financially impact on the value of the 10 residential units, because my office is behind the security gate to the front entrance.
What if you're not even allowed a small letterbox-sized statement?
I've got a little brass plaque with
Yeah.
the letterboxes, but that's halfway down the walkway, so you can't see it from the street. I've got a sandwich board, but with cars in the street, you can't really see it on the weekends. You wouldn't know.
Keith,
anyone
you've
was
got
there.
nowhere to go.
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
It's
Can I go
common
to VCAT?
property. Well, it's common property.
Yeah.
And it's well, you could go to VCAT because you've got an owner with the a dispute with the owners corporation, but what you're trying to do is you don't have the right to put signage on the front of the property.
Okay.
So you might have a dispute, And you can go, there is an owners corporation list at VCAT, you could go there, but you're not going there to enforce a right because you don't have the right to the signage.
Okay, so...
although, are you the only retail within the complex?
No, there's 2 shops out the front, but they have street frontage, and
Yes.
my office is behind the gates on the entrance to the residential units.
You might have a look at the plan. It might be a question of moving the gates. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if they'd be up for that.
Well, I'm sure they wouldn't be up for that, but
No.
have a look at the strata plan or the plan of subdivision and actually work out what rights you've got and what rights you don't have.
Well, okay. With the signage, it says that it can't be unfairly withheld, the right to signage, but I just feel...
Oh, sorry. So you do have a right to signage?
Well, it says in the plans that I can have signage, but I can't have signage, I suppose, but they can't unfairly withhold.
Well, it sounds to me that you have a right to signage.
Well,
it's
but
really
I can't have reasonable. They can't be unreasonably withheld, but it just seems to me they're being unreasonable.
Because they won't give you what you want. Then the question has to be, well, what's appropriate signage?
Well,
and if the appropriate signage is nothing, then they're not being reasonable.
Keith, who's on the body corporate board?
What do you mean?
Who are the people?
Oh, well, the owners of the residential units.
When's your next annual general meeting?
It'll be next year.
Why don't you nominate?
Yeah, I suppose I could.
Get on the board,
Yeah.
see if you can persuade them to change their mind.
They'll be very hard to persuade, but I suppose so.
Well,
have I got any... I just want
If
to
you
know
talk to your
if-
neighbours, how many people vote for the election of this particular group?
Oh, look, I'm sure I could get in there. There's probably 5, I think there's 5 owner-occupiers and 5
Okay, so
landlords.
it all comes down to the numbers as it does in politics. So you've got to talk to your neighbours and say, do you all agree with me who's being reasonable and unreasonable? If there's only 1 or 2, and very often you get that with these organisations, 1 or 2 people are hyperactive and tend to run it in the image of what they think is right and wrong, and no one ever takes them on.
Okay.
Keith, what you've described to me is that you have a right to signage. If there is a blanket refusal for signage, then they're probably breaching their obligations to you. Consider VCAT, but get someone to read through the owners corporation rules as part of that process.
Okay. What kind of... Dumb question. What kind of lawyer are they looking for? Someone...
A tall one, Keith.
Tall one, yes. Someone, Google owners corporation lawyer and see what you get.
Property lawyer.
Yep.
You want a lawyer with property experience, okay?
Okay. No
Thank you,
problem.
Keith.
Good on you, Danny in Caulfield. Morning, Danny.
Good morning, John, David. Thank you for your time.
Fire away.
Car went through the perimeter fence on our property, 1.8 metre high brick fence. The insurance got a builder to come and fix it. He's run into what he calls extra problems with tree roots, and the insurance is saying, well, we shouldn't have to pay for that, and presented the owners of the 4 units with the bill for the extra work involved with these tree roots.
The insurance company have.
Yeah.
It's pretty cheeky.
Why don't... my view is they've got an obligation to replace the wall.
Well, that's what the owners are thinking too, but
Yes.
Because the builder's gone back to the insurance company after he quoted,
Yes.
it would appear that he didn't know how to give them a proper quote. It's obvious if you look at the area that there's trees there, and what the builder should be doing in this case is saying, this is the price to fix the fence,
Yes.
but there may be problems with tree roots that I can't see until I
your claim is technically against the guy who drove the car, the person who drove the car into your property.
Yeah.
Now, the insurance company is representing him. He's got to replace the fence.
Right.
So, and if there are difficulties in terms of access or difficulties in accommodating tree roots, that's their problem. You have to take your victim or your fence as you find it. It's not a question of you saying, well, I wouldn't have... your fence is the problem. It's not. It's the accident that's the problem.
So
Push
how much,
harder, Danny.
Danny, how much money are we talking about? What's the difference?
They've come up with a ridiculous figure, something like 14,000 in extra costs.
So they're saying we're not going to replace it with a brick fence because that would cost another $14,000.
That's right.
Instead, you can have a wooden fence.
Yeah, but they still want extra money for that because they now saying that in Glen Ira, the building regulations require that if the fence is over 1 metre high, you've got to get a building permit.
That's their problem. Danny, that's their problem.
So where does Danny go to force the insurance company to replace a brick fence with a brick fence?
It's a dispute with... you live in a block of units, Danny, is that right?
Yeah, that's just 4 units.
Yes, it's the owner's corporation against the driver of the car.
Yeah.
And it's a magistrate's court matter, unfortunately.
And then the insurer for the driver of the car comes in on behalf of the owner of the car, the driver of the car, and that's how you end up sorting it out in the magistrate's court if necessary.
So it's a magistrate's court matter. Talk to your owner's corporation manager.
And you'll need to hire a lawyer, basically, Danny, in order to pursue it. Okay?
Okay. Thank you very much for
Thank you,
your
Danny.
time and your help.
Okay, well, good luck with it. Certainly good luck with it. Can we get a couple of more calls after the news headlines, David? And we'll get to you, Jane in Richmond. Hold on. You'll be next, but after the news headlines, it's just after 10:30. It's 29 minutes to 11. Tim Callanan has the headlines for us, and thank you, Tim. Jane in Richmond waiting patiently during the news. Morning to you, Jane. I promised you'd get to talk to David, and there you are.
Oh,
Hello,
thank
Jane.
you. Hi.
Hello.
I'm just ringing about my super account, or what I thought was my super account. I started it about 25 years ago when I was working part-time while studying, and so contributed to it sort of regularly over that time. And then I stopped contributing to it, and then so it just sat there for about 15 years. And then due to hardship, I thought I'll try and access some of it. And then they tell me that, well, actually it's not my super account, it's somebody else's.
What?
Even though in that time I've been accessing it online and got all the mail and they have my tax file number. And so they actually say in that time mine was closed due to the fact that I had such little funds that it was sent to the tax office or something like that. But I had no record of that happening.
So does that mean that they gave your super account number to somebody else?
Well, I think it was swapped with somebody with the same name.
So I can see a couple of issues, Jane. Lots of super fund charge fees. Lots of super funds provide insurance, even in circumstances where not everybody wants it. So if you stopped contributing, I would have expected that if your base was low enough, that your superannuation would simply drop and may get to the point where it became extinguished. Fees could have gobbled up your super. But you've got what you're describing is a different issue. And I would be talking to the Superannuation Complaints Tribunal. You're basically, so it's a question of, well, what did you contribute? What did this other person contribute? What you've got going for you is that the super fund's got your account number. So to me, it's an arithmetic exercise. It's the maths. How much of what's in the money belongs to Jane and how much of the money in the account belongs to the other person with the same name?
Either way, Jane should never be in a worse position than she would have been if the mistake hadn't been made. Someone has to make it up to her, presumably the people who made the mistake, which would be the super fund.
Yes, but in where we might be reached the point, John, where had there been no mistake, there would have been no super fund. Someone has to go through that process to work out what Jane's contributions were, what the fees were. Because if you've only got a couple of $1,000s in super, it may well be that the charges made by the super fund will gobble up your superannuation balance. Superannuation Complaints Tribunal, there is a process. The way you've explained it is very clear. The answer is you think they've combined you with somebody else.
All right, Jane.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Jane. Let us know how you get on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jerry in Wandon. Morning, Jerry. You'll be our last caller with David today.
G'day, mate. Okay, the story is my son bought a trail bike, unregistered. Before he bought it, he rang Vic Roads, gave him the frame number and it wasn't registered. They couldn't find it in the system.
So the VIN, was it?
Yes.
Yes.
And he went and got it registered for the bush.
Yes.
He got it all done, brought it down to Vic Roads. They had a look at it. They still couldn't find the VIN number, so they looked at the engine number, found that the engine was stolen. Then what they did was, they looked at the VIN number and said, that looks funny. They couldn't verify the VIN number.
Yes.
Called the police, put it on the back of the truck. It was registered by a fourth person previously. It had changed hands 4 times.
So they were able to establish that the bike was stolen?
The motor, not the bike, because the actual frame number didn't match anything.
So they can't find a VIN.
And the VIN doesn't match.
I don't want to be pedantic, Jerry, but the N in VIN stands for number. So if you say VIN number, you're saying vehicle identification number.
It's up there with ATM machine.
Yeah, that's right, and PIN number. Yeah, exactly. Yes. So let's just call it a VIN, the vehicle identification number. They couldn't find it on a frame, but they did find a number on the engine.
They found it on the frame, but it didn't match anything in their system.
At all?
At all.
Well, it's been tampered with then.
Yes.
So they say.
So what's the question then,
Well, what
Jerry?
happened was they called the police. They put the bike on the back of a truck.
Yes.
Found the original owner from 2 years previously.
Yes.
And dropped it back off to him.
Right.
So he bought the bike.
So your son spent how much money on the bike?
About $1,000 to get it registered.
When he bought the bike, he spent how much to buy it?
He spent $2,500.
And then he spent another $1,000.
Yes.
He's $3,500 out of pocket, and he's wondering if he can get in.
And what did he ask for from Vic Roads?
Sorry, what was that?
What was the question he asked of Vic Roads?
Well, they didn't say anything. They just said
No. What he's done is he's made a telephone call, and he's given them a frame number. And the question is, does the frame number match anything on your database?
No.
To which the answer is no. And he bought it on the basis that there was no charge recorded against that bike on the database at Vic Roads.
Correct.
So Jerry's son's arguing, I did everything I could and should do, and the mistake at Vic Roads has cost me $3,500. Is that, in a nutshell, what you're arguing?
Yes.
Okay, can we go to the Ombudsman or anybody about this, David? Is that worth trying?
I'm actually very cautious about whether he's got any rights at all. I mean, if there's the question will be, did Vic Roads tell him that there was that VIN didn't exist on a database? Because if it is, that should have been warning.
Or did they say there's no problem with this particular bike?
Yes, and that to me is the essence of the problem. I'd be talking to the Ombudsman, Jerry, and the reason why you're talking to the Ombudsman is it may well be the way the material was filtered out to your son by Vic Roads is where the problem arises. See, the VINs are what they call self-correcting. It's like a credit card number. If you look at a credit card number, there will be a program that will tell you whether it is or isn't a valid number. So for a VIN, same process. You can run it through if they punch it in, they'll tell you whether it is or isn't a valid number.
Okay. If the bike was never registered, will they still have a registered VIN number?
It will be a valid VIN number because it's, there you go, John, I've done it too. It will be a valid VIN because there is a database maintained by DOTARS, Department of, or it's now, could be something else now, it used to be Transport and Road Safety, of every vehicle that exists in Australia. So that's how they know to do recalls or warnings for people that there's a problem with their particular vehicle.
And tracking stolen ones.
Yeah.
Jerry, it might have been, did your son ring the Vehicle Securities Register just to see if there was finance on the bike? Did he do that, or was he speaking to Vic Roads itself?
No, he spoke to Vic Roads itself.
Yeah. Look, it's $3,500 worth of a dispute over something he paid for that he hasn't got anymore. So
he's certainly got a claim against the person who sold it to him.
Yeah,
You've got to go and find them.
Looked at the insurance and looked on the web that if the person had no knowledge, he's not liable.
I don't agree with that. The answer would be he sold you a vehicle he didn't have good title to. I'm not saying he's committed an offence. He's probably not committed an offence, but he sold you a bike he didn't own.
Yep, and then it goes to the next person
That's
who
right.
didn't
Yep.
know it, and
Yep.
he bought
Yep.
it off eBay.
So the answer
because
is you keep going back.
And someone somewhere is going to say, I can't be bothered spending all this money. The question is whether you're prepared to get the ball rolling and commit a bit of money to starting that chain, Jerry, whether it's worth it or not for $3,500. All right?
No worries.
Thank you, Jerry.
And it's a difficult position to be in because, we know that it's not a cheap exercise, David. You can quickly spend more than you're chasing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which is a harsh, difficult lesson for a young kid to learn when he's finally saved up enough money to buy the bike of his dreams.
Yeah. Do you know you can't, if you're disabled, you can't get a rec licence for a quad bike?
Why not?
There's no category in the rules to get a rec licence for a quad bike. So if you've got, I had a caller for some time ago who wanted to go riding with his two boys who have rec licences on trail bikes. He's a paraplegic and wanted to go on a quad bike. Can't get a rec licence. Needs to get it road registered and pay a lot more money.
Thought there's a discrimination argument there.
In the legislation.
No, on the Human Rights Charter.
Yeah, okay. Hope he's listening. Thank you, John.
See you again next week. David Whiting, our talkback lawyer, helping you with free legal advice, as he does after the 10 o'clock news each Tuesday.